So this is finishing up lecture 14. And so at the beginning of this lecture, I talked about collisions and factors that affect whether you could speed up the rate of the reaction. So I'm going to talk about collision theory. This is in section 14.5 in your book. The one thing I brought up early on was this idea of orientation of molecules. So I'm going to talk about that first, because if you don't have the right orientation, you will not get a chemical reaction to take place. And then we're going to talk about it needs enough energy. So that's called energy of activation. So we'll talk about that. And then you also need the right reaction. So if you don't have the right components, you won't get a chemical reaction. So collisions, molecules must collide with enough energy to form bonds. So what I have, and unfortunately, it's in black and white, so it may not be as easy to see, but I do have a copy I'm going to shift to here in a second. But please write down, this is NO3 and this is CO. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and come back in color. So this is in color, so you might be able to see it a little better. And this is exactly what you have in your notes. So the first molecule, NO3, and then this is CO. C is the blue, O is the red. So the first thing is showing that you don't have enough energy in order for them to break their bonds. So they essentially do what we call a bounce. So they bounce off of each other and nothing seems to happen. Then if you look at the other example here, the O is pointing towards the NO3, the red one. It is not in the right orientation, so they bounce off, there is no reaction. So the third reaction is the only one that works. It has enough energy and it's correctly oriented, so the carbon needs to hit it so that it can make carbon dioxide and NO2. Therefore, you need the correct orientation for things to take place. So again, with the chemical reaction, you need the proper energy and orientation. So let's talk about energy then. Okay, so I provided you this graph. I'm going to have you write a couple things in it to kind of understand this idea of activation energy. So this is what I call a reaction curve. And back when we were doing thermo, we probably just focused more on reactants versus products and finding what we call a delta H. So this is potential energy. You can call it enthalpy as well. And this is time. You could also call it reaction progress, meaning reactant is going to product here. And we have the reaction between hydrogen and fluoride or fluorine to produce 2HF. This is a exothermic reaction. We know that because the delta H is the negative. Reactants are higher on the graph potential energy than the products. The additional information that we haven't talked about is one, the curve. So I always think of it like riding a roller coaster. I need enough energy to go through the whole ride. If I don't, I won't get to products. So that is what we call activation energy, E sub A. So E sub A is going to be a term you're going to see in a couple other places as well. So it's called the activation energy. So if I don't have that, what we call the spark, you won't make product. The other part that we haven't talked about is up here at the top of the hill, okay? The top of the hill is what we call the activated complex or transition state. That is where all of the bonds between H2 and F2 have been broken, but now you have like one big complex, and they try to make a decision as to who they're gonna make, what product they're gonna make. So this is kind of like the place to have, this is where the party is happening, everybody comes to the party, and then everybody goes home, and you have a new product at the end. So this is a typical, what we call exothermic graph that you can see. The second one that I've given you is an endothermic. So write endo on the top. And this is N2 plus O2 goes to 2NO. It is an endothermic process. We see that the reactants are lower at the energy state than the products. So your delta H is positive. And again, I'm not changing any of that. What I'm putting in additionally is this reaction curve. So please note that this is the activation energy. So that is why endothermics are generally not favored as much, because it has a much higher hill that it needs to overcome, even more so than the delta H. Again, this is your activated complex on the top. Again, it just depends upon if it's called an activated complex or if it's a transition state. Same idea, it's just endothermic. That's the only difference between these two. So this is a kind of a one-step process of N2 plus O2 goes to 2NO. What would it look like if you had multiple steps? Well, I just drew a little simple one here, showing you that you could have an intermediate step. So this would be, again, you would have an activated complex here, another activated complex here, but this trough here essentially is where you would have your intermediate. And here again would be your reactants and here would be your products. So to finish up with that idea of activation energy, we do have a relationship between the K constant, okay, and temperature, okay? So in your notes, I have provided you what we call the Arrhenius equation. We used to have to do stuff with this equation mathematically. Now, I just want you to understand that the K that we've been talking about with the rate expression from differential rate law, this K varies with temperature. It's the only thing that will change with temperature. It is a constant, but it will change with temperature. So it's called the Arrhenius equation. You could get rid of that little comma there. Let me just label what this is. So this is your rate constant. So this is your K, is defined by A, the capital A is what we call the frequency factor. Frequency factor. And this has to do with collisions. So how often do collisions happen with this particular reaction, okay? E sub A is your activation energy, so what we just talked about. R is your gas constant. And T is, of course, temperature in Kelvin. And this is a negative sign, and it is E, so log function there. Again, if you're interested, there are calculations out there that you can do with K, but the AP world has decided that you just need to understand that K is a constant except if you change temperature. Because again, if you change temperature, you're going to have more and more collisions. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about are catalysts, and this is in section 14.7 in your book. You realize that if you do have a catalyst in a reaction, you typically see it written above the arrow in a chemical reaction. So anytime you see some kind of symbol, a chemical formula above that arrow, that it means that you have a catalyst in that reaction. Well, what is a catalyst? A catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction without being used up. So the reason it's written above the arrow is the fact that it's not a reactant and it's not a product. So that means you're not going to find it on either end. So it's going to be there through the whole thing and it's not going to change. So that's why you see it written above the arrow. Well, how does it actually speed up a reaction? Well, it either lowers the activation energy, and I'm going to show you the graph here in a second, and it provides the surface area. So what I want you to understand is when you have that activated complex on the top here, okay, that's the surface area. That's where, as I put it in general terms, that is where the party takes place. So it kind of gathers all of the molecules together and says, okay, let's have a party. So in a catalyzed reaction, okay, it's going to be this part of the curve. So if I have a catalyst, okay, if I have a catalyst and a better marker here, the catalyst reaction is going to be a much lower hump to go over, okay? So this yellow one that I've focused on is the catalyzed reaction. Up here is the uncatalyzed reaction. So this is a much lower activation energy than it is if it doesn't have a catalyst. And so this is where the party takes place, and that helps. The catalyst kind of gathers everybody together in order for the reaction to happen, because sometimes the molecules just don't get together. And then I finished up with, again, your book talks about in your section 7, talks about what we call homogeneous for heterogeneous catalysts. Again, it gives you a nice picture of a surface area for a catalyst to kind of gather the molecules from.